The first Kethran ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their hull plating glowing cherry-red from atmospheric friction. Admiral Zek'tar watched from the bridge of his flagship as the blue-green world grew larger in the viewports. Another conquest. Another species to add to the Empire's growing collection of subjugated worlds. "Sir, we're receiving multiple transmission attempts from the planet's surface," reported Communications Officer Velthon, her three eyes blinking in sequence. They appeared to be using primitive electromagnetic frequencies. Zek'tar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Primitive indeed. Are they attempting to surrender already? Most species realize the futility of resistance once they see our fleet. The Kethran invasion force was impressive by any measure. 300 warships hung in Earth's orbit like a steel constellation, each one capable of reducing a continent to ash. Their technology was refined through a millennium of conquest, energy shields that could deflect nuclear weapons, plasma cannons that could carve through mountains, and trooper armor that made their soldiers nearly invincible. "Actually, sir," Velthon hesitated, "they are not surrendering. They are demanding that we leave their system immediately." Silence fell across the bridge. Several officers turned to stare at the communication station. In their thousand-year expansion across the galaxy, the Kethrans had conquered over 400 worlds. Not once had a species made demands of them. Zek'tar's laugh was a harsh rasp. "Did you translate that correctly?" "Yes, sir. They are also mobilizing what appears to be their entire military. We're detecting thousands of primitive aircraft launching from their surface, and their naval vessels are taking aggressive positions." Through the viewport, Zek'tar could see tiny specks rising from the planet below. Human fighters climbing towards space with desperate determination. It was almost touching. Like insects trying to attack a giant. "Sir, we're also intercepting their internal communications," another officer reported. "They are calling it a species survival protocol. Every able-bodied member of their population is being armed." This was new. Most civilizations had a ruling class that quickly calculated the mathematics of resistance versus survival. They would negotiate surrender terms within hours of a Kethran fleet's arrival. These humans seemed to be doing the opposite, preparing every single member of their species for war. "How quaint," Zek'tar mused. "They actually intend to fight. Very well. Deploy the atmospheric processes to the major population centers. Standard intimidation protocol. Once they see a few of their cities reduced to craters, they'll reconsider their position." The first wave of Kethran bombers descended like metallic vultures. Their targeting systems locked onto major cities, New York, London, Beijing, Moscow. But as they approached their targets, something unexpected happened. The humans were ready. Surface-to-air missiles streaked skyward in numbers that darkened the sky. Fighter jets swarmed the Kethran bombers like angry hornets. The primitive weapons shouldn't have been effective against Kethran shields, but the humans had done their homework. They had studied the wreckage from the initial scout ships that had arrived months earlier, reverse engineering weaknesses in the alien technology. More importantly, they fought with a ferocity that caught the Kethrans completely off guard. "Sir, we're losing bombers," reported the tactical officer. "The humans are using some kind of coordinated attack pattern that's overloading our shield matrices." Zek'tar frowned as he watched the tactical display. Red dots representing his ships were winking out with alarming frequency. The humans were throwing everything they had at the invaders, not just military forces, but civilian aircraft retrofitted with weapons, commercial satellites repurposed as kinetic projectiles, even individual humans in powered suits attempting to ram his fighters. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the planet's surface," Velthon announced. "Put it through." A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in heavily accented Galactic standard. "This is President Chen of the United Earth Defense Coalition. We have analyzed your technology and found it adequate. We have analyzed your tactics and found them predictable. We have analyzed your history and found it monotonous. You have conquered worlds that knelt before you. We do not kneel. You want our planet. Come and take it." The transmission cut off, leaving the Kethran bridge in stunned silence. Zek'tar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: uncertainty. These humans weren't just refusing to surrender. They were actively challenging the Empire's superiority. "Sir," the tactical officer called out urgently, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. It appears they're charging some kind of planetary defense system." Through the viewport, Zek'tar could see lights beginning to glow across Earth's night side. Not city lights, but something far more organized and purposeful. The humans had been preparing for this war long before the Kethrans had arrived. "Status report," he commanded. "We've lost 40% of our initial bomber wave, sir. Their resistance is far more organized and effective than our projections indicated. They are also launching what appears to be their entire space-capable fleet, thousands of ships." Thousands. Zek'tar had expected maybe a few dozen primitive vessels at most. These humans had built a war machine specifically designed to fight a superior enemy. "Sir, incoming projectiles from the planet's surface." The first volley of human railgun fire struck the Kethran fleet like hammers of light. The massive tungsten projectiles, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, punched through energy shields as if they weren't there. 2 destroyers exploded in brilliant flashes, their hulls vaporized by the kinetic impacts. Zek'tar gripped his command chair as his flagship shuddered under near-miss impacts. This wasn't how conquest was supposed to go. This wasn't how any species was supposed to fight. "All ships," he commanded, his voice steady despite his growing concern, "prepare for extended combat operations. It appears these humans require a more thorough lesson in the futility of resistance." But even as he spoke, Zek'tar couldn't shake the feeling that the lesson might be intended for someone else entirely. The Battle of Luna began 3 hours after the initial exchange. Human forces had retreated to their moon, turning the ancient satellite into a fortress bristling with weapons. What the Kethrans had dismissed as a tactical withdrawal revealed itself as something far more sinister. A trap. Commander Sarah Chen floated in the zero-gravity command center buried deep within Luna's core, watching tactical displays that showed the approaching Kethran fleet. Her grandmother had been among the first to advocate for militarizing the moon after the initial alien contact. 3 generations of her family had worked on this moment. "Fusion mines are armed and ready," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from the weapons console. "All railgun batteries are charged. Stealth fighters are in position." Sarah nodded, her jaw set with determination. Humanity had spent the last 50 years preparing for this war, ever since the first intercepted alien transmissions had revealed the Kethran Empire's expansion pattern. While other species had fallen in days or weeks, humanity had used their time to study, adapt, and prepare. "Admiral Zek'tar is requesting our surrender," came the communication officer's report. "He's promising merciful incorporation into the Empire if we lay down our arms immediately." "Tell the Admiral," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the command center, "that humans have a saying. Come and take them." Make sure he understands the translation. Above Luna's surface, the Kethran fleet approached in a standard invasion formation, a tactical doctrine refined through centuries of conquest. But humanity had studied every recorded battle in Kethran history. They knew the Empire's patterns, their weaknesses, their overconfidence. The first fusion mines detonated as the Kethran vanguard crossed Luna's orbit. Invisible until the moment of explosion, the weapons had been seeded throughout local space over decades. Each mine contained enough antimatter to vaporize a city block. 37 Kethran ships disappeared in brilliant flashes of annihilation. "Direct hits on their formation center," Rodriguez reported with grim satisfaction. "Their shields can't handle focused antimatter explosions." But the Kethrans adapted quickly. Their remaining ships spread out, their tactical AIS analyzing the attack patterns and adjusting their approach vectors. This was why they had conquered 400 worlds. They learned from their mistakes. "Enemy fighters launching," came the warning from sensor control. 6,000 Kethran interceptors incoming. Sarah smiled coldly. "Launch our response." What emerged from Luna's hidden hangar bays wasn't the primitive spacecraft the Kethrans expected. Humanity had reverse-engineered alien technology and improved upon it. Their stealth fighters were nearly invisible to Kethran sensors, their weapons designed specifically to penetrate alien shielding. The space around Luna became a hurricane of plasma fire and explosion. Human fighters danced between Kethran formations like deadly phantoms, striking and vanishing before their enemies could respond. The alien superior numbers meant nothing if they couldn't target their opponents. Aboard his flagship, Admiral Zek'tar watched his tactical displays with growing alarm. His forces were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that shouldn't have posed any threat. The humans fought with a coordination and ruthlessness that defied everything the Empire knew about primitive species. "Sir, "We're detecting massive energy buildup from the planet's surface," his tactical officer reported. "It appears to be some kind of orbital bombardment system." Through the chaos of the battle, streams of light began reaching up from Earth, not the scattered fire of desperate defenders, but coordinated launch strikes from weapons platforms hidden across the planet. Each beam carried enough energy to punch through a battleship's hull. "How is this possible?" Zek'tar demanded. "Our intelligence indicated they were barely past nuclear technology." "Sir, we're intercepting their command transmissions. They are using quantum entanglement for instant communication across their entire battle network. Their coordination is perfect." Perfect coordination. The Kethrans had never encountered anything like it. Most species they conquered had fragmented command structures, competing governments, conflicting agendas. These humans fought as a single organism, every action perfectly synchronized across their entire species. On Luna, Sarah watched the battle unfold with cold calculation. Each Kethran ship destroyed was logged, analyzed, and used to refine the next attack. Humanity didn't just want to win this battle, they wanted to win the war that would inevitably follow. "We're receiving a transmission from Admiral Zek'tar," the communications officer announced. "He's requesting a temporary ceasefire for negotiations." Sarah's laugh was devoid of humor. "After 3 hours of battle, tell the Admiral that humans don't negotiate from a position of strength. We negotiate from a position of absolute superiority." The human counterattack began in earnest. Ships that had been hiding behind asteroids and debris fields revealed themselves, emerging from concealment with weapons blazing. The Kethran fleet found itself surrounded by enemies that had been invisible moments before. "We're detecting Kethran retreat vectors," Rodriguez reported. "Looks like they are trying to withdraw to a higher orbit." "Negative. Lock down all escape routes. I want every alien ship in this system either destroyed or captured. Today we send a message that reaches every corner of their empire." The human fleet moved with mechanical precision, cutting off escape routes and herding the Kethran survivors into killing zones. It wasn't just warfare. It was orchestrated annihilation. Admiral Zek'tar realized with growing horror that he wasn't just losing a battle. He was witnessing the systematic destruction of the most powerful invasion fleet the Empire had ever assembled. These humans didn't just refuse to surrender. They were actively hunting his forces like predators. "All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace," he commanded desperately. "Sir, they are jamming our hyperspace drives. We can't jump." The trap was complete. Humanity had studied Kethran technology so thoroughly that they had developed countermeasures for every system, every weapon, every escape method. "Say, incoming transmission from the human commander." Sarah Chen's image appeared on Zek'tar's viewscreen, her expression calm and implacable. "Admiral, you came to our system expecting conquest. Instead, you found extinction. Your empire has made one critical mistake in all its years of expansion. You assumed that every species would react the same way to invasion. You were wrong." The transmission cut off, leaving Zek'tar staring at his tactical displays as the last of his fleet died around him. In 6 hours of battle, humanity had destroyed the largest invasion force in Kethran history. But Sarah Chen knew this was just the beginning. The Empire would respond with even greater force, and humanity would be ready. The Kethran High Command convened an emergency session aboard the Empire's capital ship, Dominion of Stars. The massive vessel hung in the void between star systems, its hull scarred from 1,000 campaigns. Inside the war chamber, the Empire's greatest military mind struggled to comprehend what had happened at Earth. Supreme Commander Thexan's forearms gestured at the holographic display showing the aftermath of the lunar battle. Of the 300 ships that had entered the Sol system, only 17 had escaped. It was the worst military disaster in Kethran history. "Explain to me." Thexan's voice carried the authority of someone who had never known defeat. "How a primitive species destroyed Admiral Zek'tar's entire fleet." Fleet Commander Vortex stepped forward, his exoskeleton clicking nervously. "Supreme Commander, our preliminary analysis suggests the humans have been preparing for invasion for at least 50 standard years. They've weaponized their entire solar system." "Impossible. Our scouts reported them as barely spacefaring." "Our scouts were wrong, sir. Or rather, the humans deliberately deceived us. They allowed us to see only what they wanted us to see while they prepared for war." The holographic display shifted to show intercepted human communications. Vortek continued his briefing with growing unease. They call it Project Terra Shield. Every asteroid, every satellite, every space station was converted into a weapons platform. They've also established manufacturing facilities that can produce warships at an unprecedented rate. Thexani's mandibles clicked in agitation. This was beyond unprecedented. It was incomprehensible. In 1,000 years of expansion, no species had ever prepared for war against the Empire before first contact. How did they know we were coming? Intelligence suggests they intercepted our communications with other conquered species decades ago. They studied our tactics, our technology, our entire military doctrine. Then they prepared countermeasures for everything. The war chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. If humanity could do this, what did it say about every other species the Empire had conquered? Had they simply been unprepared? Or had the Kethrans been fighting inferior opponents for so long they had forgotten what real war looked like? Supreme Commander, another officer interjected. There's something else. The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies throughout this sector of the galaxy. They are telling every species about their victory. The holographic display shifted again, showing intercepted broadcasts in hundreds of languages. Human voices spoke in careful, measured tones to species across the galaxy, describing in detail how they had defeated the invincible Kethran Empire. They are teaching others our weaknesses. Thexani realized with dawning horror. Every species we've conquered, every world we've subjugated, they are all learning that we can be beaten. The strategic implications were catastrophic. The Kethran Empire controlled 400 worlds through the simple principle that resistance was futile. If that principle collapsed, if subjugated species believed they could fight back successfully, the Empire would face rebellions on a scale it had never imagined. We're receiving reports of uprising on 17 different worlds. Came an urgent update from the communications station. The humans' broadcasts are inspiring rebellion across our territory. Thexani's expression hardened. This couldn't be allowed to continue. The Empire's very existence depended on maintaining the myth of invincibility. Prepare the Grand Armada, she commanded. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier the Empire can muster. We will return to the human system and reduce their world to ash. The galaxy must see that defying the Empire brings only extinction. But even as she spoke, Thexani felt the first whisper of doubt. The humans had prepared for 50 years before revealing themselves. What else had they been preparing? Meanwhile, in the Sol system, humanity prepared for the storm they knew was coming. The victory at Luna had been decisive, but it was only the first move in a much larger game. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the depths of Cheyenne Mountain, watching as the final components of humanity's ultimate weapon were brought online. The Quantum Resonance Cascade had taken 30 years to develop and build, based on theoretical physics that pushed the boundaries of known science. All systems are green, reported her chief engineer. The cascade generators are synchronized across all 11 planets and 4 to 7 major asteroids. Elena nodded grimly. They had studied the Kethran Empire's history carefully. When faced with unexpected resistance, the Empire's response was always the same. Overwhelming force designed to make an example that would terrify other species into submission. How long until the next Kethran fleet arrives? She asked. Long-range sensors detect massive hyperspace signatures forming at the edge of the system. Whatever they are bringing, it's at least 10 times larger than the first invasion force. 10 times larger. Elena had expected that. The Empire would stake everything on destroying humanity completely, leaving no trace that resistance was possible. We're receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet. The main screen activated, showing Supreme Commander Thexani in full ceremonial armor. Her forearms were spread wide in a gesture of absolute authority. Humans of Earth, I am Supreme Commander Thexani of the Kethran Empire. Your resistance has been noted and found to be ultimately meaningless. The Grand Armada approaches your system with 3,000 ships and the combined might of our entire military. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to serve the Empire as slaves. Continue your resistance, and we will erase every trace of your existence from the galaxy. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Elena looked around at her staff, humans who had dedicated their entire lives to this moment. Send our response, she said calmly. The outgoing transmission was simple and direct. Elena's face appeared on screens throughout the Kethran Grand Armada, her expression serene and confident. Supreme Commander Thexani, I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Humanity's Deep Defense Project. Your first fleet came expecting conquest and found annihilation. Your second fleet comes expecting revenge and will find something far worse. You have spent 1,000 years conquering species that knelt before you. We are not those species. We do not kneel. We do not break. We do not surrender. And after today, your empire will learn what it means to face an enemy that fights back. The transmission cut off just as long-range sensors detected the arrival of the Grand Armada. 3,000 Kethran warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Elena activated the Quantum Cascade with a simple touch of her hand. Across the Sol system, generators that had been hidden in asteroids, moons, and space stations began to resonate in perfect harmony. The Kethrans were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their ships or their tactics. It was their refusal to accept the impossible. The Quantum Cascade began as a whisper, a barely detectable vibration that resonated through the fabric of space itself. Within seconds, it became a roar that shook the foundations of reality around the Sol system. Supreme Commander Thexani watched from the bridge of her flagship as impossible readings flooded her sensor displays. The human's entire solar system was somehow generating a unified energy field that defied every law of physics the Empire understood. "Report," she commanded, her forearms gripping the command throne as the ship shuddered around her. "Supreme Commander, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system," her science officer stammered. "The humans appear to have weaponized quantum mechanics itself. They're creating localized space-time distortions." The first effects became visible as the Grand Armada advanced. Kethran ships at the formation's edge began to stretch and warp as they encountered pockets of altered spacetime. Hulls that had withstood plasma cannon fire for centuries twisted like soft metal, their molecular bonds disrupted by quantum interference. "All ships, maintain formation and advance," Thexani ordered, but her voice carried a note of uncertainty she had never felt before. Dr. Vasquez watched the tactical displays from her underground command center, seeing the Cascade's effects ripple through the enemy formation. 30 years of theoretical work had led to this moment, the weaponization of reality itself. "Cascade at 15% and climbing," reported her chief physicist. "Enemy formation is beginning to experience molecular cohesion failure." On the view screen, Kethran ships were dissolving at the quantum level, their atoms forced out of phase with normal spacetime. It wasn't destruction in any conventional sense. It was erasure from existence itself. But the Empire's forces pressed forward. 3,000 ships represented the accumulated military might of a galactic civilization. Even losing hundreds to the Cascade, they still vastly outnumbered humanity's defenders. "Enemy fleet entering Phase 2 engagement zone," announced the tactical officer. Vasquez nodded grimly. The Cascade was just the beginning. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this war, and they had planned for every contingency. "Activate the stellar mirrors." Around Sol, massive reflective arrays that had been disguised as asteroid mining operations suddenly pivoted toward the star. Each mirror was kilometers wide, designed to focus stellar radiation into concentrated beams of destruction. The sun itself became humanity's weapon. Streams of focused starlight launched through space, each beam carrying the energy of a solar flare. Kethran ships caught in the crossfire simply vaporized, their hulls unable to withstand the concentrated fury of a star. Supreme Commander Thexani watched in growing horror as her invincible armada was systematically destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist. The humans weren't just fighting, they were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. "Supreme Commander, we're losing entire battle groups," reported her tactical officer. "Current losses exceed 60% and climbing." 60%. In less than an hour, the humans had destroyed more Kethran ships than the Empire had lost in its entire 1,000-year expansion. "How is this possible?" she demanded. "Intelligence analysis suggests the humans have been developing theoretical weapons for decades," came the reply. "They've turned their entire star system into an integrated weapons platform, using technologies we don't fully understand." But Thexani hadn't conquered half the galaxy by accepting defeat. Even as her forces died around her, she pressed the attack. The remaining Kethran ships pushed through the quantum distortions and stellar fire, their crews dying at their posts but still advancing toward Earth. "All remaining ships, "Concentrate fire on the third planet," she commanded. "If we cannot conquer these humans, we will at least ensure they cannot inspire further rebellion." The surviving Kethran forces, nearly 1,000 ships still, focused their weapons on Earth itself. Plasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes streaked toward humanity's homeworld in a concentrated barrage designed to crack the planet's crust. But humanity had one final surprise. "Planetary defense grid is online," announced Commander Chen from Luna. "All citizens are secured in deep shelters." Around Earth, the atmosphere itself began to glow as hidden generators activated. The planet's magnetic field, artificially enhanced and weaponized, created a barrier of pure energy that surrounded the world like a second skin. The Kethran barrage struck the field and simply vanished, not blocked or deflected, but converted into harmless radiation and dissipated into space. Earth remained untouched while the space around it blazed with absorbed energy. Fexani stared at the tactical display in absolute disbelief. The humans had made their entire planet invulnerable while simultaneously destroying the most powerful military force in galactic history. "Supreme Commander," her communications officer called out with barely controlled panic, "we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Over 200 worlds have declared independence. They are using the humans' broadcast instructions to disable our garrison forces." The Empire was collapsing. In a single day, humanity hadn't just defended their world, they had triggered the fall of a galactic civilization. "Incoming transmission from the human planet," the communications officer announced with resignation. Dr. Vasquez appeared on the main screen, her expression calm but implacable. Behind her, displays showed the Quantum Cascade still building in intensity. "Supreme Commander Fexani, your empire expanded through fear and intimidation. Today, that fear dies. We have demonstrated that your forces can be defeated, your technology countered, your dominance ended. Every species in the galaxy now knows the truth. You are not invincible." Fexani found herself speechless, staring at this human who had just engineered the destruction of everything the Empire represented. "You have a choice," Vasquez continued. "Order your remaining ships to withdraw and begin negotiations for the peaceful dissolution of your empire, or we will demonstrate that the Quantum Cascade can be expanded beyond this star system. We have no desire for conquest, but we will not allow tyranny to continue in our galaxy." The transmission ended, leaving Fexani alone with the impossible decision. Around her, the greatest military force in galactic history lay in ruins, defeated by a species that had learned to turn physics itself into a weapon. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Kethran Empire faced an enemy it could not defeat. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Kethran Empire, once a monolithic force that had dominated 400 worlds, had fractured into dozens of independent systems. Former slave species reclaimed their homeworlds, using the tactical knowledge humanity had broadcast to overcome their oppressors. Supreme Commander Fexani, now simply Commander Fexani, stood in the negotiation chamber aboard the neutral station New Harmony, humanity's first diplomatic outpost beyond their solar system. Across from her sat Dr. Elena Vasquez and a delegation of human representatives, their expressions calm but watchful. "The final dissolution protocols are ready for your signature," Vasquez said, sliding a data pad across the table. "All Kethran forces will withdraw to your core systems. Reparations will be paid to liberated worlds. Your military will be reduced to defensive capabilities only." Fexani's forearms trembled slightly as she picked up the pad. Just months ago, she had commanded the most powerful military force in galactic history. Now she was signing documents that would reduce her people to a minor regional power. "My species has ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years, she said quietly, her voice heavy with defeat. "We brought order to chaos, structure to primitive civilizations." "You brought tyranny," replied Ambassador Chen, Sarah's younger sister, appointed as humanity's first interstellar diplomat. "Order built on fear isn't order at all. It's just suspended chaos waiting for the right moment to explode." Through the chamber's viewports, they could see ships from dozens of species docking at the station. Former enemies working together, sharing technology and resources. Species that had been at each other's throats for centuries under Kethran rule were discovering they had more in common than they had differences. Fexani signed the dissolution treaty with a heavy heart, officially ending the Kethran Empire's expansion. As she set down the stylus, she looked up at Vasquez with genuine curiosity. "I must ask, How did you know? How did your species prepare for war against an enemy you had never met? Vasquez leaned back in her chair, considering the question. We didn't prepare for war against you specifically. We prepared for war against anyone who would deny us our freedom. That's the difference between your empire and every species you conquered. You fought for dominion. We fought for survival. But the weapons, the technology, you developed things we had never seen before. Because we had to. Dr. James Morrison, humanity's chief scientist, spoke up from across the table. When you face extinction, you don't accept limitations. You break through them. Every impossible technology we developed came from the simple refusal to accept that we couldn't defend our home. Thexani nodded slowly, beginning to understand. The Empire had grown complacent through easy victories against unprepared enemies. They had forgotten what desperate innovation looked like. There's something else I must know, she continued. Your quantum cascade. Could you truly have expanded it beyond your solar system? The human delegation exchanged glances. Vasquez smiled grimly. Commander, that weapon was a bluff. The cascade requires our sun's specific resonance frequency to function. We couldn't have used it anywhere else. Thexani stared at her in shock. You were bluffing. The greatest victories are won without fighting, quoted Ambassador Chen. Ancient human wisdom. Sometimes the threat of overwhelming force is more powerful than force itself. The revelation hit Thexani like a physical blow. The Empire had surrendered to a weapon that couldn't have been used against them. But even as the irony sank in, she realized it didn't matter. Humanity had demonstrated something far more dangerous than any weapon. They had shown the galaxy that the Empire could be beaten through preparation, innovation, and sheer determination. The cascade was a bluff, Morrison continued, but everything else was real. Our defenses, our coordination, our refusal to surrender, that was all genuine. And every species watching learned that lesson. 3 years after the dissolution of the Empire, the Galactic Cooperation Council held its first assembly. Representatives from over 300 worlds gathered to establish new principles of interstellar relations based on mutual respect rather than domination. Dr. Vasquez, now serving as humanity's permanent representative, stood at the podium addressing the assembly. Behind her, a holographic display showed the transformation of former Kethran territory. Worlds rebuilding, species collaborating, technology and culture flowing freely between systems. 3 years ago, our galaxy was ruled by fear. She began. One empire imposed its will on hundreds of worlds through superior firepower and the threat of annihilation. Today, we gather as equals, each species contributing their unique strengths to our common future. In the audience, former Commander Thexani listened with what her species considered respectful attention. The Kethrans had adapted to their new role as contributors rather than conquerors, their military expertise now used for peacekeeping and defense against external threats. Some ask if humanity regrets the destruction of the Kethran Empire. Vasquez continued. The answer is complex. We regret the necessity of war, the loss of life, the years spent preparing for conflict instead of exploration and discovery. But we do not regret defending our freedom, and we do not regret showing the galaxy that tyranny can be overcome. The assembly erupted in approval, hundreds of species expressing agreement in their own unique ways. Chirps, clicks, harmonic resonances, and bioluminescent displays created a symphony of unified determination. Moving forward, our principles are simple, Vasquez concluded. No species has the right to dominate another. No world should live in fear of conquest, and no empire built on oppression will be allowed to threaten the peace we have built together. As the assembly concluded, Thexani approached the human delegation. Her once proud bearing had softened into something resembling humility. Dr. Vasquez, I wanted to thank you, she said quietly. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Thank us. For destroying your empire. For teaching us what we had forgotten, Thexani replied. For 1,000 years, we believed that strength meant the ability to impose our will on others. You showed us that true strength lies in the willingness to fight for what matters most, even against impossible odds. My people are better for that lesson, even though it came at such a cost. Vasquez nodded respectfully. Commander, your people were never our enemies. Your empire was. There's a difference. As the former Supreme Commander walked away, Ambassador Chen joined Vasquez at the viewing port. Outside, Ships from dozens of species moved through space in peaceful formation, a sight that would have been impossible under the old order. Do you think it will last? Chen asked. This peace we've built. Vasquez watched a Kethran science vessel docking alongside a research ship from one of their former slave worlds, crews working together on joint exploration missions. Nothing lasts forever, Sarah. But we've proven that even the most powerful empire can fall if enough people refuse to accept oppression. That lesson won't be forgotten. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest truth, that freedom is worth fighting for, no matter the odds. And in teaching that lesson, humanity had not only saved their world but transformed an entire galaxy. The stars no longer belong to any empire. They belong to everyone willing to defend their right to exist among them.